Then the question is, what does the long term look like? That's the real question we should be asking ourselves. What do the Israelis have in mind over the long term for Gaza? And the answer is very simple. They plan to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And because they're having a devil of a time doing that, they're executing a genocide. They're murdering all these people mainly for the purposes of driving them out of Gaza. And if they can't drive them out of Gaza, they'll kill them all. That's what's going on here. And they're doing it again with the help of the United States.
Inside Greater Israel today, you have probably about 7.3 million Palestinians and about 7.3 million Jews. And if they expel all the Palestinians like they want to, you probably have 7.3 million Jews. But the other question you have to ask yourself is, what's going to happen to all those Israeli Jews over time? How many are going to stay there? How many have already left? How many will leave when the shooting stops? I mean, what is the future of Israel? And I would argue it's not a very bright future. I talked about the fault lines inside the society before and what that means for the future. I think all of this war, it really spooks people. And when you see that you have neighbors that have missiles that can hit you, and you get into, fights like the fight that the Israelis just got into with the Iranians, you want to ask yourself, what are the consequences of that for the population? Will people leave? Are people going to go to Israel? I wouldn't bet a lot of money on that. And I wouldn't be surprised if a good number of people leave because they just don't feel safe there. Anyway, I think that if you look at this country, it does not have a bright future. Now, I think that Benjamin Netanyahu would disagree with that. And he would tell people that if you follow my policies and the Americans support us hook, line, and sinker, we're going to create a greater Israel and live happily ever after. All sorts of individuals and organizations with real standing like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, various people in the United Nations have said that this is a Holocaust or a genocide. And so I think that label is now beginning to stick in ways that leaves many Israelis, and certainly the Israeli government, very uncomfortable. And they'll go to great lengths to cut against that. But the more this goes on, the more difficult that becomes. And you want to remember here, we just want to think about this just when we're assessing the strategy. What's the ending here? How does this end? I'm hoping every day, I hope that Trump moves in and says enough is enough. And the Israelis are forced to accept a ceasefire and supply trucks flow into Gaza. Let's assume that happens. That would be wonderful in a certain sense, but at the same time, it hardly goes anyways towards solving the basic problem. These people have no homes. Gaza's been made unlivable. They really have no place to go unless the Madagascar option is realized. And I don't think that's going to happen either. But what's the end result here? And, the Israelis don't like the idea of having 7.3 million Palestinians in their midst. Okay, but you can't get rid of them. Therefore, you have 7.3 million Palestinians inside your borders, and those people are living in the most horrible of conditions. What does this mean? The world is going to mobilize against you. Maybe the U.S. government will protect you, and it will limit the leverage of the so-called international community. But nevertheless, the consequences for your country are going to be horrific, right? The moral stain on your reputation is going to be huge.
The damage that Israel is doing to its reputation is huge. It's just hard to believe that more Jews around the world are not standing up and demanding that Israel put an end to this genocide. It's going to have devastating consequences for Israel, and it is certainly not going to have good consequences for Jews around the world. This is a disaster.
And what does that mean for people who live inside Israel? And furthermore, just to take this a step further, because we want to think about where this train is headed, what about the lobby? The lobby is already overexposed from its own point of view. It's out in the open. It's playing smash mouth politics. It's acting in ways that are fundamentally at odds with basic American values like freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Is the lobby going to be forced to continue acting this way for year after year? This will be disastrous for the United States. This is a terrible situation inside the United States. The situation with the lobby is terribly unhealthy for liberal America. And I don't mean liberal in the sense of a liberal Democratic Party. I mean liberal in the Lockean sense of the term, liberal in the sense that we're all part of a liberal society. Having the lobby, act the way it's been acting in recent years for the foreseeable future would be disastrous. So if you sort of think about where we are and how we get out of this, I don't see any solution at all. And I think pursuing Netanyahu's policies just make the situation worse. But again, if you go to I think vast majority is probably too strong a word, but the clear majority of Israel's supporters in the United States, and tell them that we're in a terrible situation, they would agree. And if you say, how do we get out of it? They would say, more force, more force. Just, pound the Palestinians, pound Israel's neighbors. That's the solution. And I've long ago come to the conclusion that there are real limits to what you could do in any situation like this with military force. But Israel and its supporters, they reject that line of argument. They think that you can solve political problems with the big stick, with the iron wall, with military force. It's at war with a handful of its neighbors. It's a highly aggressive state prone to violence. There's no evidence that that's going to change. It has this huge looming problem with Iran. It has powerful centrifugal forces at play inside the body politic. And I believe the situation with the lobby here in the United States is not sustainable over the long term. I think now that what the lobby does is out in the open, and now that the lobby's playing smash mouth politics, that this can't go on forever. And so I think Israel is in real trouble.